and welcome to Literary Prospects, where we talk to authors and literary professionals about books, publishing, and the writing life. I'm Kelley Vick. I'm the host of the program, and in just a moment, it will be my pleasure to introduce today's guest. But first, a reminder that if you like what you hear, please do take a moment to subscribe. It helps us out, and you can make sure you never miss an episode. Also, we've opened a Literary Prospects shop, so if you're looking for bookish shirts, totes, and gifts, please check that out at literaryprospects.etsy.com. And to grab books featured on the podcast and check out more curated book lists, you can visit the Literary Prospects bookstore on bookshop.org. And last, but certainly not least, if you're interested in extra content on querying and publishing that's only for our members, please consider joining the Literary Prospects Patreon at patreon.com/literary prospects. We'll leave all those links below in the show notes. And now, let's introduce today's guest. Anna Mitchael is a Texas-based author whose body of work quietly and consistently asks the question, how do we find our way in the world? In her 25-year career, she's worked as an advertising copywriter and creative director, deputy editor of Magnolia Journal, and is a best-selling ghostwriter. Her new book, They Will Tell You the World Is Yours, is out now. Anna writes a monthly column where she moonlights as a scrappy and spirited advice giver named Boots, and a weekly Substack called Little Rebellions. She and her husband and kids live in Waco, Texas. Anna Mitchael, thank you so much for being here to discuss your rebellious new book, They Will Tell You the World Is Yours. Publishers Weekly says in these lyrical vignettes, essayist and Wacoan magazine columnist Mitchell mines her life experiences to share with readers. The author's insights are perceptive. Author Joanna Gaines says there's wisdom and wonder in these pages. Author Liz Bell Young says, why does it feel this way? To be understood. To trail behind an exceptional human and watch as she weaves and signs and reminds you of all the parts of being alive. And author Sarah Worcester says, this wonderful book is a stunning summation of all the decisions we face daily. What will we do next? Who will we believe? The stories go deep into the human experience to help us find hope and an astonishing beauty. I will read and reread it for years to come. So, with that, Anna, how would you describe They Will Tell You the World Is Yours?
It's funny when you get asked that question a lot, and so it's one of those things that I think you prepare yourself for, come up with like good answers. And so I think my like good answer is that it's a series of 85 vignettes that tell an unfolding of a woman's life up to the point of like a spiritual awakening. I think that as you were just reading those, though, I was thinking that what the book is for me is a series of very short, deep dives into moments of life that are hopefully evocative, and something that people can find representative of human experience that lead them to good questions, for their own, just for the spaces and seasons that they're in.
This is your third book, but it's quite a departure in theme and structure, style from your previous work. Yeah. What was the spark that started this one for you?
I think that I've never felt like there was just one type of genre that I was really drawn to write. And this was just where I was. I'd been working at Magnolia Journal. I was working there as deputy editor, and I was really seeing how like the shorter structure of the stories there was resonating with women. And I was really feeling like within my own life, and then also in the lives of all the women that I was walking with that I loved, like just this busyness and this heaviness, and kind of it was really we were all moving so fast, it was difficult to break through, you know? And so I had this feeling that like I couldn't sit down and like wrap my head around all the books that I wanted to be reading. And so I was kind of
Mhm.
like, I just needed to get something more direct and something that I felt like I was kind of writing just what I needed to like speak out and come back into me, if that makes sense. And then it
Mhm.
ended up in this shorter form. And I had just started writing the pieces and without even realize, like really without thinking that they would become a book to publish, because I didn't really think that it would be publishable. I'd written
Mhm.
vignettes a long time ago in my 20s and had been told that that it just wasn't a form that somebody, you know, an unknown author could get published. And that was kind of
Mhm.
when I veered off and I was like, okay, well, I'll write essays, I'll write fiction, I'll write the other things.
Mhm.
I returned to this just in a season where I was like, man, I want to feel like alive again and I want to feel like more than my my
Mhm.
calendar on Outlook, you know?
Yeah.
And so I started writing and then they started building and piecing together and it became a book and I've just slowly found people along the way that have also really felt called out of just their daily hecticness and busyness by this short form.
Mhm.
And so it's just been beautiful.
You say that the book is not a memoir, but it's also difficult for you to call it fiction. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, it's not a memoir in the sense that it's definitely not me in the pages. I mean, there's very the like the actual story points of the woman's life, I think, are kind of more of a collage. A lot of them are, I mean, random articles that I read that kind of have fed in, you know, the things that stick in your
Mhm.
mind, or there was a few like events that I had really close friends that went through that once I figured out it was going to get published, I had to call them and be like, you're going to see this in the page. Is that okay with, you know? But I think that it's hard for me to call it fiction because I was really working to write from like a place of truth about just what how I was like looking back on time and remembering it and just this like truth that I was feeling of being like not alienated exactly, but just kind of distancing myself from how I thought the world had been ordered for
Mhm.
so long, you know? And so
Mhm.
coming out of that place of truth, like I don't want to be like, it doesn't feel like fiction to me in that sense. Like, there's too many threads through it that I like believe so strongly in. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. You've also said that inside the looser, dreamed up spaces are where you find connection. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yes, I think you know, I've found so I've worked professionally as a writer for 25 years now. And that has involved a lot of, I mean, everything from like brochure writing up to like ghostwriting books for people and like everything you can even imagine in between. Um, but I think that a lot of times with writing, I have struggled with ending up in a place where my brain plans out what I'm going to do. Like, even down to like, I've sat down a lot of times with like outlines for books and I've just executed day after day. And
Mhm.
it's, you know, and it's very rational and it's like skill based almost, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but I think that with this book, because of the nature, the way I wrote it, the very like zero expectations I held with it, I kind of let a lot of that go. A lot of that tightness I was holding on my whole life with at that point. Like I said, like it was just all very organized, you know? And
Mhm.
so I kind of like let all that go. And then in this space that I had really just lost touch with for a couple years of like the creativity, the imagination, you know, that kind of the like not spaced out, but just distanced from the control, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's where a lot of the story really came from. And so I think for me, like that is what, so I almost like don't want to put it into words because I don't want to bust it, like bust the balloon of
Mhm.
what it still is for
Yeah.
me. It's kind of like magic of creating where you're not sure, you're not sure where you're going to end up at the end of the day. And that's
Yeah.
like, okay. You know, there are times for outlines. I'm
Yeah.
in for the outline, but then I was like, this book brought me back to what's unknown in us that can come out.
Mhm.
And so that has just been, I don't know, that's just been, it's been a long publication process. Like I wrote this book many years ago, and that has just been something that has lived in me, like, and just, and gifted me in so many areas of my life once I remembered that again.
I love talking and thinking about point of view.
Mm.
And this book is written in second person, future tense.
Mhm.
How did you come upon that choice?
Um, I just literally like fell into it. It really wasn't something that I planned. It just kind of was what was right there. And I think part of it was that I was writing out of this place of curiosity for kind of how I was going to play into the story, how I was going to be distanced from the story. And this you space just felt to me right for what I was going to try to do. And I hope it's right for readers. I hope that it's, my like idealized dream for it is that somebody can read it, and if they don't feel like going into the story, that's fine. They can kind of read it. I don't want anyone to feel like it's like you go do the,
Mm.
but that people can take a distance, or in some stories that maybe resonate more for them, they can feel spoken to, or they can feel something called out of them thanks to that
Mhm.
point of view.
I felt like that when I was reading it. So it's working, at least for this reader, the way you intended.
Right. That's great.
You've said that writing about the spiritual life fundamentally altered your own.
Mhm.
In what way?
I think, it's funny because, like I said, I wrote about it many years ago, and as my husband and I had really we had like come to our own faith, and like had sort of what I would say was like I guess I would say it was like a transformational kind of like changed our lives. Um, Season. And
Mm.
but yet it wasn't something that we had spoken of really outside of our house. I mean, it had changed like how we were living and what we were doing. And so I guess in that way, maybe it was seen and observed by some, but it wasn't something that we had really sat down with like a community and been like, this is what we're doing now. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
so, but as I was writing this story, and as I realized, what I wanted to say about it, about the world, which was directly influenced by, what we had come to believe, then I just felt a certainness in it. And I
Mhm.
felt okay expressing that. And even now, but I go back and I'm like, I probably would have written this possibly like more boldly, but for me at the time, it felt like so bold. And so I think that
Mhm.
that's really an interesting part too. And I love it. Like my first book came out in 2010, and it was like a series of essays about my 20s.
Mhm.
And when that came out, it was a memoir, and somebody
Mhm.
asked me like, what is the deal with writing a memoir when you're like 30? What do you really, for like, what do you have to say?
Mhm.
And which I totally get as like like I don't really want to go read about life wisdom from somebody who's 11. Well, actually, kind of I do. I mean,
Actually, I was gonna say.
well, they really might be bringing it back around, like have like all the original stuff that we're
Mhm.
trying to mine out and recover. But I understood the point of the question, I guess
Right.
is what I should say. But what I really, and I thought about it for a long time, and I was like, I am like never going to remember what it feels like to be at this point again, because as I grow and change, I'm going to like be remembering, have new perspective on things, and the rawness and the
Mhm.
messy may not be accessible again, you
Mhm.
know? So now I do think that a little bit looking back of just, that I am really glad to have written it from that place that I was in, because a lot of my thinking and my beliefs are more like, I guess you could say like refined or smoothed out in a way of like it's that fresh discovery
Mhm.
moment. I can't
Yeah.
ever like, go back and get again.
Yeah. Yeah. But there it is on the page.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You mentioned your husband.
Mhm.
You dedicated this book to your husband.
I did. I did. He still does not know that.
Oh.
left like the early reading copy, like or the, just kind of out a little bit. And like, did you get to the guy? He was like, well, I mean, I've read the book. I kind of was waiting for the actual one to come out. And I was like, okay, I could either tell him right now to just like flip to page 5, or I can like actually let him get the real copy. And so I'm just gonna let him get the real copy and
I
my
love it. Well, this interview will air when the when it's
yeah,
out.
yeah. But my boys keep laughing about it. They're like, does dad still not know? And I'm like, no, not yet.
Well, can you talk about your decision to do that, to
Yeah,
dedicate to your husband,
yes.
and not to tell him?
No, just to let that be a big surprise. I just think that there's so much of this book that just came out of just my everyday life and I just remember that whole period when I was writing it. It felt like just a day after day we're kind of hanging on kind of season, but I was
Mhm.
making this beautiful thing or this thing that was beautiful to me, this thing that was like really giving me life. And in that, it was like he, I saw how much he knew me then because I think he could see that this was like something I was working on and he like protected it without ever really like speaking about it.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah,
Like, I don't know, he like really created the space and the time and the encouragement without ever being too on the nose about it or making me feel pressured and let it be this kind of, because I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. Let it be this kind of quiet, like secret kind of thing,
Mhm.
you know? And
Mhm.
so I don't know, there was really, it never occurred to me to not dedicate it to him. I just felt like it was kind of this like moment in time of where we'd been and also like kind of I don't know, it just felt like it was for him.
Really beautiful. Your Substack is called Little Rebellions. Little Rebellions is also in the subtitle of your book, On Little Rebellions and Finding Your Way. What do you mean by little rebellions?
I think, it's I mean that I think that there are all of these like systems and rhythms that we get put into, and a lot of them are to fine ends. I'm not like just anti every like system and thing that we have going on, but I think toward to what I spoke to earlier of how disconnected I got from, for like lack of better language, from like my soul. I mean, not to drop soul
Mhm.
in the middle of a podcast, but like literally like
You can do
my
that here.
like my core self. Like
Mhm.
I was too busy to lock in. And so to me, like the little rebellions are about saying like, this is this is where I'm going, and I am going to just like step out a little bit and make sure it's right for me. It's like, and just checking into kind of where we're being guided and to
Mhm.
make sure that it's to the places that we want to go. And that's what I really, especially to the Substack, I think Substack's such a cool, interesting space. And
Mhm.
um and I knew that what I wanted to do was like some of these vignettes and just have them actually like be able to reach out to people through their inbox, like and just give them a little moment of that, like and
Mhm.
so everyone is kind of about just making sure that we're like and I really try for it not to be me telling anyone how to look or where to look, but
Mhm.
more about creating space and like reminders of how deeply are we looking? Are we recognizing that, you know, that we actually can have these moments in our days that have great value and we don't have to just like rush everywhere.
I think we mentioned the book is 85 vignettes
Mhm.
separated into 5 sections. The vignettes are titled mostly with thoughtful titles that reflect the material. We do get some days of the week and a numerical countdown at the end,
Mhm.
near the end. Um, I know you were going with the creative flow a lot here, but how did you decide finally on the structure that you used?
Well, I really did write one after another. And the only point that I really paused was for the end. I wasn't exactly sure, like before that final numerical countdown. I just wasn't really sure how I wanted to finish it.
Hmm.
Um, and so I actually wrote that last countdown thinking that maybe I would still have a couple stories at the end. And it just, I don't know, it felt like I was done when I got
Hmm.
there. And then I just sat on it forever and really went back through and was like, so, it just kind of came up with the pacing of the stories. Like I remember too, the morning I woke up and wrote Monday of that
Hmm.
series that goes the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I didn't really know that that was coming either. But then I was kind of like, I really want something that's reflective of just that. Here we go into the week. Here we are
Hmm.
continuing the week. Here's the thing.
Hmm.
So the choices really came out just of the sitting in it and seeing like, I would always before I wrote, I would always read the vignette before and just see sort of like what feels like it's being born out of that. What would what feels next.
That's really interesting. So you actually wrote them all. I mean, they're in chronological order in the book, but you actually
Mhm.
wrote them in that order in which
Yes.
they
hmm
appear.
hmm
Wow.
Yeah, I think in the editing process, I think we added two vignettes. That's why I
Mhm.
keep saying 85, but in my mind, I'm wondering if this whole time I've been like, are there 86? Because I think we took one out and I think I wrote two. So there's 85-ish.
85, maybe 86.
Yeah, rough ballpark. But yeah, no, I really when I say there was no outline, like I really was, I decided I just wrote it. So there it was really just what comes next.
That's amazing. I love that. Blows my mind that it just came out like that.
Oh, but I think that was like such the fun and the freedom of it,
Yeah.
of just letting myself write again. And it's so hard, we don't, no one has much time, and
Mhm.
so I think it's
Mhm.
really hard to be like, I'm just going to let this go. And especially if it doesn't yield anything in the end, I mean, I know I feel like I've been very like efficiency trained. Like, oh, well,
Yeah.
if there's not some kind of outcome or something you need from it, then why?
Hmm.
And I think, and this book really took me back to a place of being like, the why doesn't have to be visible. It doesn't have to be like something that we can measure.
Were you writing whenever you felt called in any moment during your day as you were working on this, or did you have like a specific quiet time in the morning when you would sit with this, or what did that look like?
Well, I was full time working, so but we weren't full time in the office. We had
Mhm.
like we were pretty much we would I'd be in the office off and on, like definitely big meeting days, things like that. But we had a lot of flexibility with the magazine, mostly just because people were wearing so many hats. They were like, "We just trust you, and we're asking you to work crazy hours, so do it wherever you need to be."
Hmm.
So I tried to work in the morning when that was possible, but I mean, life, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so there were a lot of times that I would stay, I would end up just staying up late, or the way the meetings would structure, I would spend my lunch hour, like, so
Hmm.
I just kind of really made it a priority to fit it in. And for that time, I was kind of like everything else that I can control in my day, if I haven't done my writing yet, I'll push that and prioritize the writing. I mean, there's some things you can't push, but I'll just make sure by the time I go to bed, I've done half a vignette, or I've done a vignette, or started a vignette. Just put time to it.
Yeah. Yeah. There are also these beautiful illustrations in the book that accompany most of the vignettes. Where did
Yeah.
those come from?
So those came from an artist. His name is Jonathan Bunker, and
Hmm.
he lives in the Philippines. And Jonathan and I got connected through I was just looking for illustration styles. And I was at Magnolia Journal. And so, they do beautiful illustrations in the magazine. And I was like, so it was just always I was always surrounded by great artists and great visuals. And I just didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew that I wanted something that had like almost a surreal effect, like something that
Mhm.
spoke to kind of, because there are these threads that go through the book that hopefully you don't feel totally grounded in reality, right? Like
Right.
I don't know, like just the way that the
Hmm.
pacing is, and I don't when I read through
Hmm.
it, and I wanted some illustrations that kind of spoke to that, and so I was looking around on an online site, and his art was on there, and I just reached out to him, and I was like, I have this book of like vignettes, which may not even. I don't know if that means anything to you. They're like short little stories. Would you be interested in possibly looking at it and seeing if it speaks to you to do some illustrations? And that like whole just finding him stumbling onto the piece he had written, I think it's just amazing the people that have come into the picture of this book when I need them. I mean, he is like such a creative soul, and like I don't know, like our working relationship has just been great in the ways that he's spoken to the stories. And my hope is that if I'm able to do another book of vignettes, that he would also work on it, because it's just, I don't know if you've had this experience. I hope so. We find people that you collaborate with that you're like, this is really making, this is really challenging my work in
Hmm.
all the best ways.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's what Jonathan's brought to the picture. So it's just been, I mean, he's like the illustrator, but he's just, I don't, it's more, he's like the thought, I don't know, he's a thought pusher. I don't know how to
Hmm.
say it. Like he's just kind of always pushing things forward and asking good questions and challenging perspective and stuff. So it's good.
How did you come to writing? Have you
Mm.
always been a writer?
I've always been a reader.
Mm.
So I was always a reader when I was young. I wasn't someone that was like scratching out short stories when I was, as soon as I could
Hmm.
or anything like that. But I did love Harriet the Spy, and she was scratching out observations,
Hmm.
Someone actually the other day pointed out to me that maybe that, because I always do refer to Harriet the Spy, because it was just such, I don't know, she was just like that book character for me, that like kind of she got to see like the whole world and was looking at it in a different way than anyone else. And I think in that way, I just as a child, I just loved that. And
Hmm.
so anyway, so I think that kind of that watching the world and that curiosity has always been there. But when I was in college is really when I started. I knew that I wanted to be writing, and so I started finding ways to do that, and ended up kind of on an advertising track, which put me around just like crazy creative people that were always kind of dreaming up projects. And I really can't. I don't. I just. I can't even. I think that just being around people that were just making things was so
Hmm.
valuable for me, because I didn't really grow up in those environments. I didn't grow up like around a lot of artists. I mean, I grew up around amazing people, but just not people that were always making things.
Yeah.
And once you see that of like, oh, well, I could just go home on a Wednesday and like start a book, paint a picture. I mean, I can
Yeah.
go like dream sims that you're like, oh, well, like open up the doors, why don't you? And so
Yeah.
I think that was really the point at which when I started like my career in advertising, I was like, okay, I can try this. I can make this happen. And I started getting really serious about writing.
And then what was the road to publication like for you?
It's been different every time. I remember when I got my first book published, Andrew and I were just talking about this. I was at a dinner. They did like a young authors thing in Dallas that I was invited to, and we were at a table with a woman, and she had published 4 books, and she had a different agent for every time, and had just been talking about how every time has felt like starting over a little
Wow.
bit.
Hmm.
And I was at the point where I had just gotten done, this is my first book had come out and there
Hmm.
and everything. And I remember we got in the car to drive home, and I was like, whew, glad that's not going to happen to me. And we were just laughing about it. We were like, sure enough, like I jinxed myself then, right? Like, and so every time has felt like a little bit of a fresh start of just, I have had a different agent for every book I've worked on, but my books have all 3 are wildly different categories, and
Hmm.
and there's been time in between each, and so I just think it's how it's ended up. So
Hmm.
it's always felt like a little bit of an uphill climb, but I now don't feel like I'm alone in that, because I see that,
Hmm.
and I also have come to peace with it and decided like if that's what it takes. And if there are people that are out there reading that are interested in it, then I don't know. A little climbing's fine.
You mentioned that you had written this book, your most recent one, quite some time ago,
Mhm.
and the publication process was rocky.
Yeah.
So, what was it like for this last one?
Well, yeah, I don't, it was, maybe it wasn't like Rocky as much as it's just been extended and drawn
Okay,
out,
yeah.
you know? And so
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
I actually feel like I've been lucky in it because like I have a wonderful agent who has believed in it. She, you know, I mean, even knowing full well that like, yeah, a book, it's going to be a little bit of a hard sell, you know, and I'm not someone that has a big platform or ever like has really done all those things. Um, and so, but she believed in it anyway and really fought hard for it. And so I think, you know, that whole the process of getting an agent, well, I wrote it and then it took a while for me to decide I was going to try to sell it. And then the agent that I wanted expressed interest, but there was kind of like a space between signing on. And then we did some, you know, really solid thinking on like what the book was going to be for, like how to position it kind of back and forth, like to conversations. And there's one of those things like, and then you're sitting there and I think it was like right before the holidays or something. So you're like, okay,
Hmm.
well, let's wait till, you know, and it's the book's been one of those where everything's felt like, okay, well, the best time to do this would be in a few months. And then I sold it to the publisher in a period where like on a traditional schedule, I think it would have come out like maybe election time last year. But we were all like, okay, kind of like a little unknown author. Do we want to compete with
Mm.
the election media? You know, and we're like, oh no.
Mm.
Anyway, and then conversations were like, well, starting summer and around Mother's Day and some things, really trying to speak out to women. And anyway, so it's just how the calendar's gone a little.
Yeah.
But luckily, there have been other things going on in life, and it's felt okay. So.
You've also done some ghostwriting.
Mhm.
What was that like? How did you get that gig and would you do it again?
Um, you know, ghostwriting, I think I feel really lucky. It just kind of came to me. And I think that now that I've been writing for so long and just I moved around the country a lot and wrote in some different places, and I have friends that are still kind of all over. And so I don't know, it's just like a neat time of the career when people I've chased jobs for so long. It's like such a relief that sometimes somebody knocks on my door. You know, I always just feel like, what? Oh my gosh, someone's there. And so that's neat. So the ghostwriting kind of came about like that. And I've had a range of jobs for like a really wide range of people. And I think that it's just been interesting because at first I was like, this is going to be a really cool way to help people get their stories on the page. And I
Mhm.
think it has been that in some cases. And then I think in some, I actually just wrote a whole piece about this. But I think in some cases it's also been kind of like, oh, books are a lot of different things to different people, you
Mm.
know, like they are oftentimes they're just kind of like cogs in a wheel of a larger strategy for publicity or marketing or
Mm.
whatever, you know? And
Mhm.
and and so at first that really like rubbed me and I was like all on my high horse about it. And then I was kind of like, no, you know, like that is okay. Like books are a lot of things and maybe this is just a chance for you to hone in on what you really love about writing and reading and
Mhm.
who you support and why you support it and you know and just kind of like
Mhm.
looking at some of those things. So I think I like ghostwriting. I like it a lot when I think that the person on the other side is just is interested in is interested in the book.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I'm definitely, I mean, I'm never not open to writing projects. I mean, I've like really had a lot of fun writing brochures before. I
Mhm.
mean, you know, like
Yeah.
there's just I don't know. I probably wouldn't take any ghostwriting job that came along just because I have lived and learned a little on it, but I'm still open to it.
Speaking of other writing projects, you also have an advice column. Can we talk about Boots? Your
Yeah.
alter ego?
Yay, Boots. Yeah, Boots is fun. So my husband's a farmer, and so we lived out in the country for like a very long time outside of Waco. Waco is, just kind of surrounded by a lot of like smaller rural communities, and so it's part of its charm, I think. And so I had written for the city magazine in Waco for like a long time. And it was like 5 years ago. I was like, I didn't really want to be writing like narrative stories about my life anymore. My kids were just of an age where I felt like, I don't know, I didn't need to really be like telling stories that might end up, I think they're funny, but they don't kind of thing in the
Yeah,
city
yeah,
magazine,
yeah.
I just felt
Mhm.
like anyway, and so I was like, and plus I just kind of wanted to do something different. And so they've always given me like so much freedom there. It's just been amazing. And I was like, yo, I love advice columns. I like always have loved advice columns. I just think they're amazing. And so I was like, what if I do an advice column from the perspective of like a crazy country girl who's just like super gritty? And they were like, sure. And I was like, really? So then I just ran away and was like, okay, no time to say no. And started writing and it's really fun. And people send letters in. And if they don't send letters in, then I go knock on the doors of my neighbors and I'm like, hey, a Boots here. And they'll give me stuff. So it's just a really fun kind of little project.
Oh, I love it. That's great. What do you know now that you wish you had known before publishing that very first book?
Uh, I think it was, I spoke about it like kind of in a summation sort of way of like but it's okay that it's an uphill climb. And
Mm,
that, I think that I said it in like, I don't know, 2 minutes, but that was like a 5 year sort of process,
mm,
of kind
mhm,
of like, well, wait, do I want to, if the world doesn't want this, do I want to do it? Like, does it
mhm,
matter? Is it, and am I embarrassed? And like there was
mhm,
just a lot of kind of things around that now I don't think about or worry about. And then I guess in some ways even kind of embrace.
mhm,
So I think that my goal set was just different then.
mhm,
And so I think
mhm,
if I could go back and be like, it's really, I mean, it would be really nice to have kind of that worldly success, but that's really not what you're going to be hanging on to the most in 15
mhm,
years. Like that's not going to be what you're waking up thinking about and what's shaping you or where you're like turning your life, it
mhm.
would have saved me some heartache, probably.
What is your best advice for aspiring authors?
From me or from Boots? Because Boots would say something about probably like fried chicken and grits. But
Well, maybe from both of you,
right?
from each of you.
Yeah, I often do also advise fried chicken and grits. No, I think, I think my advice for authors, I mean, I don't know. I guess on one level it's like don't give up, but I think right now there is so much advice out there
Mm,
that like it's really tricky to like continue. It's really tricky to continue on the path that might be right for you, and I feel that a lot when you look. It's like, and I have like a really close friend right now who is querying her first book, and just walking through that with her is such a different environment because there's so many people telling you how to do everything, that there have been a few times where I've had to be like, what do you think is right for this book? Like,
mhm,
let's just like put that aside. Like, where are you landing? What do you
mhm,
see out of it? Would you even want this person this agent who's giving this advice? Would you want that person to be your agent? Because
mhm,
her advice is to get an agent, like, like look at where it's coming from. Like, how do you, and is that really in line with what you want to be making and creating? And I think that that's like just so hard right now because everybody who's writing is also trying to manage like the social media machine and like the
mhm,
and there's so many balls in the air. And so it's like, how do we make time to pull back and be like, but is this what I want to make? And is this what I want to say? So make that time.
Yeah.
And then make time for fried chicken and grits. Also good for life.
Yes. 100%. We have a traditional last question on the
Okay.
podcast,
Yes.
and it is, when they tell you the world is yours, is made into a movie or series, which would be a very interesting movie or series.
Right?
What do you think the theme song should be?
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. I know what I would make it, but I feel like it's just gonna date me and like make a lot of your people at home maybe
I don't think there's anything wrong with picking
yeah.
something that's a little bit of a throwback.
Well, so I guess what I should say is that I have music that I listen to when I write, and every book has a different artist. And so I made this book when I was listening to Gray Street, which is a song by the Dave Matthews Band.
Mhm.
And I actually lived on Gray Street in Boston. Was like my second apartment when I had moved to Boston after college. And the song just I don't know, it like sparked something in me where like I just kind of step out of this life I'm in and go to like more of a reflective, kind of nostalgic, like accepting that sadness is okay. Like, like some of
Mhm.
those things come out for me with
Mhm.
that song. And so I listen to that when I write. But I feel like also, I don't know, I would really, for this book, I also would want a very unknown theme song because I think
Mhm.
it is like that whole, the fact that it's like you, and
Mhm.
there's not a lot of characterization in the book. And I think that that kind of anonymity is what makes the book work. And so I would also say like I would love a song that came out of screaming out of nowhere from somebody who's just like hanging on and trying to make it, would feel right.
Yeah, great.
So,
Anna Mitchell, thank you so, so much for coming on and talking today. It
oh, it's
has
been
been a
great.
pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me. I loved it.
Thanks for joining us on Literary Prospects. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. We'll see you next time.